Today's the day I build my dream guitar. For any of this to make any sense, I gotta go back to the beginning. You see, I started this YouTube channel as sort of a way to document my tone, and I uploaded my first YouTube video about guitars on November 11th. So that would have been 1 year, 7 months, and 6 days ago. And in that 1 year, 7 months, and 6 days, I've learned more about guitar than I've learned about anything in my entire life, which is really weird because I've never cared about guitar ever. And then I just woke up one day and I was obsessed with guitar. I was listening to Nirvana's Utero album a lot, and I started to just really get obsessed with the guitar tones. But there was a specific tone that I wanted more than anything. Nirvana tone was cool, but I wanted the sound of heart-shaped box. That guitar tone was just like the most plucky, interesting guitar sound I've ever heard in my life. And the sound of Rape Me. It was the most aggressive, clean sounding guitar I've ever heard. It was like aggressive and almost distorted, but not at the same time. And I told myself, I was like, that's the sound that I want. Like, why doesn't my Kurt Cobain Jag sound like that? And that's when I ended up buying every single guitar on an Utero that was used for recording to try to figure it out. I bought a 1969 Mustang. I built a Farrington guitar. I had a Kurt Cobain Jag, which sounded awful, so then I built my own. I got a high flyer and I spec'd it out 2 possible ways that it could have been. I did everything. That past year and a half was the most experimental time of my life, and it led me to one conclusion. None of those sounded like the tones I was trying to get. And that's when I decided to do more research, and I found out that Kurt actually used Steve Albini's Veleno guitar. It was this guitar that was made entirely out of aluminum, and he used that for a lot of the album. And I actually talked to Bob Weston, who was an engineer on the session for In Utero. He said, yeah, he used it a lot for overdubs as much as he remembers. And that's when I knew I was screwed. I was like, okay, I'm never gonna have that tone. Because if you want a Veleno, it was this guy in the 70s that made them, and he only made like 180 of them, and like all the famous people bought them. They were like $15,000, 20 grand, 30 grand to get your hands on one of these. But I knew, I knew that was it. So I could either just give up there or I could continue. So I decided to take a plate of aluminum and I built a neck out of strips of aluminum from Home Depot. I did it to just see hey, does aluminum have a sound? Oh boy, the moment I hit the first chord, I was like, that's it. That's f***ing it. At first, I just figured, okay, all aluminum must sound the same. So I built my first aluminum guitar, the box aluminum guitar. And after talking with Steve Albini and all this stuff, he told my friend JQ actually that the Veleno that Kurt used had guild pickups. So I got those vintage guild pickups, I had everything, I was ready to go. I finished the guitar, I wired it up, and I played heart-shaped box. And I was instantly really disappointed. It didn't sound anything like heart-shaped box at all. In fact, it sounded really awful. And that's the moment I realized that just having an aluminum guitar doesn't mean it's gonna sound like this Veleno guitar. That's when I realized that all aluminum guitars actually sound different. I know I'm talking a lot, but just hang with me. When you say Veleno, you have to instead ask the question, well, which Veleno? Because they all sounded different. The really early ones were built like this. Now this creates a really unique sound in general because all these little pockets are milled down super duper thin, almost to 1 millimeter. And this is much thicker here. So these kind of act like little steel drums. They resonate and they create these really weird overtones. Then the design quickly changed to this, where instead they put in through beams and they milled this whole center section down a lot lower. So this is where you start to get a much more tin-like kind of sound. Here's a 3D model of it I've done here. These through beams actually, when you put these two halves together, create a small room inside of the guitar. If you think about it, let's see, if we go inside of the guitar, this whole center section is milled down really low, and these through beams create the structural support. Here's an old gold-plated one. You can see how unique the construction is. Now, while the really early ones are described as being really airy and acoustic-like, the second revision is known as being way more resonant, way more bell-like, way more chimey, if that makes sense. Then there was a third version where the body got super duper thin. Now this itself is going to change the sound for a lot of reasons. There's a lot less cubic volume. And the last revision that I know about is like this, where the back piece completely detaches from the front. So it's super thin and they just chopped out this whole entire back end. Now the reason I'm telling you this is because since they all sound different, you have to ask yourself, which one was used on In Utero? So I built all four revisions. Which leads us to this point here. This is the very early first design. It's revision 1. And for the time being, I just put a wood squire neck on it because I'm waiting for the necks to finish to get machined. I should have them in a week or so. And I'm also waiting to get the other body revisions. All right, now that you guys understand what this is, and even though it has a wood neck on it, so that's gonna change the sound too. Y'all wanna see what revision 1 sounds like? Okay, so this thing sounds absolutely amazing. And that's with a wood neck. For instance, over here, I have an aluminum neck. This is a hoaxy guitar neck. Hoaxy, I'm not sure how you say it. Which sounds great. It's an aluminum neck. But it doesn't sound like this. I was just telling myself, like, I literally don't want to play anything else. So what do you think?
Dude, when this is finished and you have the actual neck on it, and it's beautifully resonant.
Thank you.
Wholehearted endorsement of this amazing thing.
Aluminum is the future. What's even more wild about this thing? It has that sound so much acoustically that even if I do this, like, it's totally unplugged right now. That's nuts. Now, if I try to do heart-shaped box with, like, just the aluminum neck, it doesn't work. It just doesn't sound right. Yeah, ain't gonna get it. Which definitely leads me to believe that the body, in this case, is much more important than the neck. And by the way, speaking of guitar bodies, so this is version 1 here, but I'm pretty sure the actual one that was used on In Utero was V2. I'm gonna show you a cool trick. Here's how I know this. So here's Steve Albini's Veleno here. You take a straight piece of paper and you line up this bolt with that bolt. They all match perfectly. It's a perfectly horizontal line. Now if you go to a really early Veleno, here's a super early one, and you do that same thing, this middle bolt is much higher. The early ones were like that because John didn't machine in a structural post. So again, you line that up, it doesn't match. But if you look at any of the later ones, that's a later one because you can tell they all match horizontally. Which leads me to the second part of this conversation. I'm gonna sell these. These are gonna be for sale. You'll be able to buy them. Now, I'm building some original Veleno necks for myself for personal use. They're a company, so I can't resell their headstock design. I wouldn't want to do that. That's their property. So this is where I'm gonna need you guys to vote on a headstock design. And I was talking with my buddy Aiden, and we both were thinking about calling this guitar just Kurt. It just kind of makes sense in this situation, I think. So I think it's gonna be just called Kurt. Ironically enough, when I watched it getting machined, the clamp that was holding down the big aluminum block said Kurt on it as well. So I guess if that's not a sign, I don't know what else is. So I need you to vote on the headstock design. I was thinking like maybe this with the K, or maybe this, like with a heart on it, I don't know, or without a heart. You guys let me know in the comments. I need to know before I start producing these in bigger numbers and taking pre-orders. You'll be able to get these on aaronrash.com, which is another thing I gotta get doing. I gotta like finish my website. There's so much to do. I gotta make engine pedals. I know you guys still want those. I got a harmonic percolator that I need to do a video on. A fuzz pedal, a clone that I'm building of it, which is all Steve Albini stuff. And at the end of the day, I think we all kind of owe some type of thank you to Steve Albini, because if it wasn't for his Veleno guitar that was brought along to the Utero sessions, Utero would have never sounded the way it did. And so I know I associate that tone with Kurt so much because it's his music. But that tone is just as much Steve Albini's. That's his thing. He was on aluminum guitars before anyone cared about it. So I'll stop rambling. This thing is so lightweight, I can't believe it. And I will see you guys on the next one. Peace!